Welcome back to I'll Have Another Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you back on the show, and congratulations on a great race in Chicago.
Thank you so much. It was like one of those days where the rare days where it kind of all comes together. So it's exciting.
I got the feeling though when I saw you at the press conference and then like in the elevator before, I was like, "Oh, she feels good. Like she's feeling very confident about this race." Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I was confident, but I was also, there's just so many things that can go wrong in a marathon. But I think when I arrived in Chicago and I wasn't sick and I wasn't hurt and the weather was okay, like it just seemed like pieces were falling together like I had dreamed they would. And so I just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity, that seemed to be presenting itself, to have a good day. So.
You seemed calm. Were you calm?
My husband and my coach might say otherwise, but I felt like I was okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so seventh place, 2:21:56, which was a massive PR.
Yeah.
2 minutes, 31 seconds. Is that about the time you thought if like all the stars aligned, you'd be coming in around?
Yeah, that's what we had talked about. My coach had kind of mentioned that about a week or so out, and then we were just gonna kind of wait and see what the weather looked like and what pacers were seeming like they would go out at, and kind of tweak the plan if we needed to. But that was sort of what I was thinking about. I mean, the marathon training it's just so weird because like some days that pace feels totally fine. It feels really easy, and other days it doesn't. And so you just hope that, you do the taper right and that you come in fueled and all that and it comes together. But yeah, the goal was 222, but then I was like,
Okay.
if I run 222.00, I'm gonna be so frustrated. So to come in just under was really exciting.
Yeah, talk to us about like your mental game throughout the race. I got to see you a mile 2.5, mile 13, and then the finish. But like, what were the processes in your mind throughout the race? Did you have like low points, high points?
Yeah, I feel like I went into it with I had a conversation the night before with my coach, and he was just like, you're just gonna have to. I trust him a ton, and he was like, you're gonna have to trust yourself, and just see how it's feeling, because we had just gotten the news that the Pacers were not gonna necessarily do what we had thought they were at the beginning of the weekend. And so then I was going to be in this like weird in between where like I felt like 220 was too ambitious, but like 223:30, I felt like we could do faster than that. And I also thought that if I started out at 223:30, 224 pace, I was gonna have a harder time picking it up because I definitely am somebody who likes to like get in it from the start and just like hang on for dear life. And so I didn't want to have to like put the pressure on myself to negative split substantially in order to hit the goal. And so I kind of ended up somehow ahead of the 220 pacer. So it's definitely more of an aggressive start than like on paper than we had talked about, but I felt good.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was just such good energy downtown, and I don't really. Sometimes I'll overlap with men in training, but I do a lot of the miles myself. So like just being around people gets me really excited. And so it just didn't feel like it was too much early on. And then about halfway, I was like, look, this is probably going to get hard soon, and you need to like be kind of ready for that. And shortly thereafter, it did. It started to get pretty grindy. I was fortunate to have Reed along for most of that stretch between like 4.5 and like I don't know 22-ish miles. So that was good. And I saw my coach somewhere. I can't really actually figure out where he was. Somewhere between like 22 and 24. He just reminded me to like kind of just like refocus and kind of visualize the runs that we had done, on the towpath here in Virginia. And and that kind of helped me just to calm down because the time had started to creep up. I was starting to like creep into like the 5:30s, and after he kind of gave me that like just cue to refocus and to kind of relax a little bit. I looked down at my watch and like, who knows with GPS, it's so hard to tell, but we were in a point where I kind of felt like the GPS was probably right because there weren't a ton of tall buildings around and I was back down in the 520s and I was like, okay, it was very helpful that he was there in that moment because I felt like it was starting mentally to go, to go south. So, and then the last mile, like crowds will carry you through. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So he was there in the perfect moment, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah.
What were your half splits?
1:10:09 is what I've heard. I thought I saw 1:10:03, but
Okay.
who knows?
Okay. So I think that's interesting to think about, like, you knew you were like the 220 pacers too hot for me right now, 223 too slow, but then you kind of just like sounds like went with the feeling and went with your gut and went with like the crowds, but not too much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting like how you make those decisions like in the moment. Like it sounds like it was a good thing that you didn't overanalyze it and freak out like, "Oh no, I'm going too fast."
Yeah, I mean, it felt right. And then when Reed came up, he said, "This is the 220 pace group," and I was like, "Okay, well, like, I really shouldn't be running faster than this pace." So, like, I mean, it still feels good, but I'm just gonna like try to put myself in this group and just chill for a minute because it feels good now, but we're only 4 miles in, and so it
Yeah.
was. He came around at a good time, I think, to like kind of save me from biting off more than I could chew. Yeah.
You say Reed. Is it Reed Buchanan?
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if that was the
Yeah, and
Reed.
I
So
hadn't even
okay,
spoken to him before the race,
okay.
because it was just like we knew that the Jackson Neff and Rory Linkletter were going to do coming into the weekend. We thought 70-30 to 71, and then it turned into 71-30 to like 71-45 or something like that. And so it was kind of like they're the closest fit, but they're not a great fit. So it was kind of just like, oh, you're gonna have to figure it out. So
Oh man. Well, this is just so exciting because you've had a tumultuous last 12 months,
yeah,
really,
yeah,
truly.
yeah.
And not being able to see you compete at the Olympic trials and the marathon in February. We didn't love it. I'm sure
Mhm.
you didn't love it.
Yeah.
How did you get through like knowing that you had to miss out on that really big experience?
I mean, it was hard. Like it really, I struggled a lot with it. My coach and my husband, I feel like were just like doing their best to kind of keep me, keep my spirits up. But they also acknowledged that like it really was unfortunate and that it was frustrating and we'd kind of gotten the knee back to a place where we thought it might be okay, and then I got COVID. So, and then at that point, it was like, well, actually, this is a fairly easy decision because like my fitness was like borderline.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have had an okay day, maybe not, but because I had just like run close to a half PR in Houston. So we were like, maybe, depending on, the heat and the humidity, like who knows what kind of race it's going to be. But then getting COVID, it was like, all right, well, like with a sort of shaky knee and COVID, this is not going to work out. So, yeah, they did a good job of keeping me off of social media, and just trying to ignore what was happening in Orlando, which was tough because, I mean, I love the sport and like, I had planned on being there. So, but like both of them were just constantly saying like, when you come back, you'll be better than you ever were. Like, it's fine. And I appreciated that they were believing in me when I was was a little shakier there. So,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many people actually know that you finished the World Championships marathon. Your knee was broken.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because
Nice,
like
nice line across it. Yeah.
right, like that's wild. But you didn't realize it was that bad. Tell everybody that story.
No, so like, not just before the race, it started to ache quite a bit, and so we were just, I mean, we consulted with a lot of doctors, and I mean, it's just such a rare injury. Like, you don't fracture your kneecap unless it's a traumatic injury, and so, um, the advice, and I don't fault the doctors at all. I mean, they were doing the best they could with the information that I was giving them. Um, there's nothing that attaches where it was hurting. There's nothing that, like it just didn't make sense. And so they were like, maybe bursitis, maybe some kind of tendonitis where like there's referred pain. I don't know. And I mean, I think it was probably a stress reaction at least going into it, but I think Budapest really did it in. But when we were so the water stops at World Championships, and I would imagine at the Olympics too, are different from most world majors in that there's just like a lot more involvement with the national governing body representatives. Like they can hand you stuff. You don't have to take it off of a table and stuff like that. But they also have the countries in order by name. And so you kind of want to run through the 5K one and just kind of like scope it out just to make sure that you kind of understand that like when you actually need a bottle at 10K or 15K or whatever, you like know what's going on. And so I don't know that I necessarily needed a bottle at 5K, but I went for a bottle at 5K just because it was so hot. And when I was kind of coming out of that, there was another runner who got her foot underneath my heel, and it kind of hiked my hip or my like knee up higher than it might otherwise be moving in a marathon. And I like felt this like excruciating jolt of pain through my knee, like saw stars and was like, okay, I'm going to the front. I'm getting out of this pack. Like, this is insane. If anybody else touches me, I'm done. And so, yeah, so I got in the front, and I'm sure that people, especially with like when the pain finally got to me and I essentially imploded, I'm sure people thought that it was just like a stupid race strategy, but like we were running at a pace that was super comfortable. I just got out in front because I needed to get away from people. And I didn't want anybody to touch my legs again, because I was super unsure about like how stable I would be, and I didn't want to fall, but I also didn't want to take anybody else out in the process. So it was a rough last, I don't know, 20 miles, 10 miles. But it was one of those moments where like, you don't get to wear the Team USA singlet very often. And it was my first time ever. And it meant a lot to me to be on that team. And I wasn't going to quit unless like I like physically couldn't make it. So I'm not sure it was the smartest thing in the world to finish. But I don't really regret it either. I feel like this injury was the kind of injury that was just going to take forever to heal. And when we got back, the night I got back, I called my doctor from Budapest and was like, look, like, I survived the marathon, but like, I need an MRI, and got an MRI the night I got back. I think we landed around 7 p.m. and I was on the MRI table at 9 p.m. So we knew very shortly after that it was fractured, which like my coach texted me before and was like, whatever it is, like we will get through this. And it was like the worst possible thing I could have imagined it would be, because like all the doctors were like, we don't really know how this happened, and they didn't want to immobilize it because I was able to walk, and they kind of felt like that would be, solve one problem, create others. And yeah, it just took forever to heal, because I guess what we eventually figured out is that like, every time I would move my leg, like the tendon on the top and the tendon, like the patellar tendon and the quad tendon, were like basically pulling it apart. So it just took ages to heal. And there was a scan somewhere along the way that like actually made it like it seemed like it had gotten worse, not better. And I was like, I don't understand how, like I haven't run a step in 6 weeks. How's it gotten worse? So it was just frustrating. Yeah, things kind of came together, or started to like turn a corner in early April. I ran my first race in at George Mason University, which is where I train, which is where my coach coaches, in May. And Grace Moore from Philadelphia came down and was talking about breaking 15:30, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is pretty intense. This is gonna be an interesting first race back, but I'm glad I did one on the track because it was soft, and it was like, all the guys that and women on the team, who I saw every day at practice were, not all of them were there because it was after the school year had ended, but some of them came out, and it was just a nice sort of gentle reintroduction to racing. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, I don't know if I've ever been more nervous for a race than I was
Really?
before this. Like, yeah. But
This is so fast and so
yeah, I
new
think
to
I was
racing
like,
again.
yeah, I knew that I was gonna try to, like, I knew I wanted to win, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't raced in months, and I'm gonna have to run close to a PR to beat Grace, and um, yeah, and I think I also just like my coach was always saying, like, it's not a referendum, like it's not a referendum on your fitness. We're just doing this to do it. We're doing this to be a rust buster. But I definitely saw it as more than that. I was like, if this is a disaster, then we'll all be very sad. So that one went pretty well, and then I raced the mini in New York, and then yeah, I had some summer races, did the trials.
The trials, yeah.
Which, like, I mean, I wasn't race sharp at all, but like I was aerobically quite fit because I had cross trained for months and months and months. And so, I mean, that was pretty much on full display in Eugene. That, like, I mean, I could run a semi aggressive pace, but like switching gears was not
Yeah.
not gonna happen. And I knew that going in. Like, I was like, when we started like jogging at the beginning, I was like, okay, like, look, I can't kick. So I would rather this be like semi honest. Because like if we jog and then I can't kick, I'm gonna finish last. And like if we make this semi honest and we kick, I probably won't finish last, but like definitely not making any Olympic team either. So, but I knew going in, like points wise and time wise, like that wasn't on the menu for me anyway. So, yeah, it was a fun summer. I mean, I feel like I was kind of like getting back into fitness. And each race was kind of reassurance that we were on the right track, and just a lot of fun races. I was first American at Peachtree and the first American at Beach Beacon, and I wanted to be the first American at Falmouth, but couldn't quite pull it off. And ran a big half PR in Philly, and everything was just kind of setting up for like Chicago could be good. It's just like, you start the school year and everything is, the beginning of school year is exhausting, and the kids were starting to get sick, and, like open up all the windows and put on like the air purifier, and like I wore a mask the last week before the race, and it was just like, you just hope it all comes together. So I feel super fortunate that like there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong in the buildup that didn't. So, yeah.
I mean, it sounds pretty perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, truly. Do you think that the nervousness for that 5K is like the time she said she wanted to run, paired with like coming back from an injury, not racing in a while, but also like the 5K hurt is so different than the marathon hurt. Like, and now that you were like you've been a full-fledged marathoner for a while now, but like, how do you like mentally approach a race that short now?
Yeah, I basically told myself it's basically going to be a sprint, so just just go with it.
It's gonna hurt for like 12 of the 15 minutes.
Right. Yeah, there was like such good energy on the track though, and there were a lot of people. I mean, it was like in my backyard, so there were a lot of people out that I had run with or alongside for the last several years. So and a lot of them knew that the previous several months had not been great. So it was nice I just felt very supported there. So,
when you talk about the trials in that way, like I think most people who know your story and know like what you were coming off of, the year you had come off of, and how you race, I think we knew what you were doing. If someone doesn't know the sport and is watching the 10,000, they might be like, "Who's this girl? What's she doing?"
Yeah,
Yeah. You like to run in the front.
Yeah.
Would you say that's fair?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, I think that I do better in honest races, and I'm not scared to be the one to make it honest. And I'm sure that there are, people who think that it's probably foolish and that I'm leaving time on the table, and they may not be wrong, but I think it's also kind of about like what you're most comfortable doing. And because I do a lot of my training alone, like I don't spend a lot of time in a pack. And
Oh yeah.
some of the guys at Mason, like this past fall, hopped in some workouts with them, and I think it was really helpful for me to just like, and that's what I tried to take from those workouts is like not trying to like be on the edge or in the back or on the front, and like just when I was in a pack of guys to just like appreciate that like this is like this is what racing feels like, and you have to be alert, but not so much so that you're stressing yourself out. So it's definitely, I like to race in the front, but I feel like it's something that I need to continue to work on is being comfortable in a pack. And what I feel like how I feel like I've evolved in the last, I don't know, year or two is that when I'm in a pack and the pace is like, or it's just like the energy is a little frenetic, is I feel like I'm now more comfortable with like going to the lead and getting out of it that way rather than letting myself get dropped. And so that's just kind of something I need to continue to work on, is that like if I'm not comfortable in the pack, like get out to the side or get out to the front, but don't just let yourself get dropped. So
Yeah, it's like more racing
mm-hmm.
seems like the answer to like getting more comfortable with that. But you also are still teaching full time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like how do you make those decisions of like how often you race? This is just a much different life than someone who isn't a full-time teacher.
Yeah, I love to compete, and I think that I'm constantly reminded that when we do shorter events, like if I race a mile or if I race 3K or 5K or whatever, that like they are steps in the process. And so sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself to like, I want it to be a certain time or whatever, but sometimes it doesn't make sense in the way that we're kind of building towards something. And so I do like to race. I think that we will probably, hopefully, do some indoor races and, and just kind of practice being in a crowd. And, all those things that come with racing in a more confined space. Yeah, I feel like I like to race. I don't find it particularly stressful to go from like at Chicago. I taught on Thursday, got on the plane Thursday night, and then went to Chicago. And I don't feel like I need a big turnaround. Like I don't need to get to a race 3 days before to kind of get in the mindset. I feel like I've gotten pretty good at like, teach and a couple hours later race. But so I don't feel like the teaching is going to have much of an impact this next year on like how frequently I race. It'll be more kind of just like my coach has talked about how like I could race a bunch of races, but like we're going to be a little bit more deliberate about, what sets me up to reach bigger goals. So we'll see.
Do you think the teaching like does it take the pressure off a little bit?
I don't know. I feel like I take it super seriously, and I've always been kind of I've always been a worrier, and so I've always been worried that the perception is that it doesn't have to matter as much because I have something else, because it is the most important thing to me right now. And seeing how good of a runner I can be has a limited shelf life, right? Like I'm 34. I think I've got a couple more good years in me, but I want to see how good I can be. And so I feel like I hold myself to a standard of like I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can possibly be doing to get better, and not giving myself the excuse that like, oh, it was a long day at work, and so I'm not going to do strength work, or it's a long day at work, so I'm not going to go to the pool or whatever. So I think that's just kind of the way that I'm wired, but yeah, I don't know necessarily that it takes a lot of pressure off. In fact, like I feel like the week before Chicago, what we were doing at school. I got to Chicago and I was like, I just definitely bit off more than I could chew teaching wise this past week because I'm new to the school and I was so worried about the perception that like I was just kind of phoning it in because it was the week of my race. And so like, well, we're just going to play review games or like, we're just going to whatever. And I didn't want that to be the perception. And so I feel like I did a lot of teaching. I was on my feet a lot that week. We just got through a lot more content. And because we got through a lot more content, kids were emailing and saying like, can I meet you at break or can I meet you at lunch to go over this or whatever? And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, this is supposed to be like not a super intense week. And it just sort of like ended up being a super intense week. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
uh,
Two super important professions in your life at the same time. Um, I don't think that you and I mean, we've talked, but not in an interview since you got your Brooks sponsorship. So I guess I should formally say on the podcast, congratulations.
thank you. Thanks.
Given that though, like, would you consider taking a couple years off teaching?
I would. Since Chicago, we've been, I don't know. Like, I mean, we've talked about how like this kind of formula of like not overtraining because I don't have time to overtrain has worked for me. And I do tend to be kind of like if I can do more, I will do more. And so teaching is like kind of
Holds you
helps
back a
like
tiny bit, like to not
yeah.
overcook.
Yeah. So
Oh,
in some ways, like I'm like, I don't know, this is what's working. So why would I stop? At the same time, like I think we're gonna have to look at the calendar for next year because if the World Championships in Tokyo is a thing, that's in early mid-September. And then like I don't know, like maybe I don't know what that'll look like. But I want to make sure that if I'm showing up in a Team USA singlet, I like haven't, you know, I've like given myself the best shot to be my best self on that day. So
mm.
we'll see.
But like, if you took the years off and you don't overcook and you
Mhm.
can spend more time sleeping,
Yeah.
resting, like just more active recovery as far as like massages and things like that, you just have opened the door for more time for that. I mean, doesn't that sound nice?
Yeah, it does sound really nice. I mean, really the sleeping would be the biggest thing because I feel like I have an extremely tight schedule and the massages do happen and the strength work does happen and I don't feel like I need to do more of like I feel like I'm doing enough of those at the moment, but like there's always sleep. Sleep is great. Sleep is always where there's room for growth. So
Do you get like 8 hours a night?
I try to.
Yeah.
And I often get really close. In the weeks leading up to Chicago, I did try to like on the weekends at least like even if I didn't sleep, just like turn the lights off, lay in bed and just like decompress for a little bit and
Yeah.
rest if not actually sleep. Um so um yeah.
Mm.
That's definitely um a big one. Um so yeah, I mean, I really do try. We use the weekends to like my husband and I to like do meal prep and do like all the kind of the life maintenance stuff. Like there's just like we add to a list every week. Like okay, we're gonna need to like there's no trips to the dry cleaners
Yeah.
or like there's no pedicures or manicures that are happening during the week. Like all those kind of things that like don't need to happen during the week. Meal prep stuff like that. Like just kind of like maintaining life. My husband does a lot of the grocery shopping now, and stuff like that. Like if it can be pushed outside of Monday through Friday, we push it to the weekend. And so it requires a certain level of discipline. But I feel like days like Sunday make that worth it. So
Mm.
yeah,
Speaking of your husband, recently
yeah,
married. When
yeah.
was the wedding?
July 20th.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So you've had so many changes, like
Yeah.
new Brooke sponsorship, marriage, like so many things have been happening that seem really happy.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's I mean, I feel like the whole last year is very much a mixed bag, but the last 5-6 months has been really good. We got
How'd you
married
guys
in
meet?
May. High school on the track team. He's a thrower. Yeah,
But have you been together this whole time?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Um, there was like,
wow. What
yeah,
a long, that's a long relationship.
yeah, yeah. We did the. I mean, we've only lived in the same place for a about a year and a half now. He's a major in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
So when I graduated from college, I came back to the DC area. We both went to high school in Falls Church, Virginia, and um, he went to the school in California in San Diego. I went off to Notre Dame, and then yeah, he joined the Marine Corps at the end of his college years. He did officer candidate school after his senior year, and then he deployed a lot. There were a lot of deployments back to back, and so it really just didn't make sense for us to move, or for me to move, because I'd be moving to a place to like kind of uproot my life to just like then he'd be gone. So
Yeah.
we just tried to make the most of like pre-deployment leave and post-deployment leave, and kind of spend time together then. But yeah, we did a long run the morning of the wedding with my
Aw.
like best friend and training partner, and yeah, and then it was a very very small wedding, but like
Mm.
very us.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
The little that I do know about you, I'm like, perfect, makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Well, we need to thank you and him for his service, for
Thanks.
yeah, serving in the military. Um, why did you what were all the reasons for choosing Brooks?
I really like when I was talking to different companies, I just really loved everything about kind of their corporate culture. They were just incredibly kind and like very much wanted to support me in continuing to do the things that I was already doing to be successful. Um, and like they were fully on board with me continuing to teach, and yeah, they were great. And I loved the shoes. And like right off the bat, I kind of had a couple of shoes that I wasn't sure which one my favorite one was. But I train now on the Go 16 and sometimes the Ghost Max. I really like their super shoe. It was kind of like right um, at that transition time between the HE3 and the HE4. The HE4 is amazing. And I talked with Des, and she was like, the next super shoe is really good. And so that was exciting to know that like the
Ah,
tech was there in the shoes. But yeah, like I went out last November for my visit, still with very much with a fractured kneecap. I was kind of starting to run, so I got to do a little bit of running with Erica Kemp and Des.
mm,
But like, despite the fact that I was arguably at my physical low, and definitely like emotionally was like very, very shaky, they just, th- they were awesome. Like they were just
mm.
so welcoming and so encouraging, and just seemed to have a lot of faith in, um, that I would get back. And so Sunday was awesome because it kind of felt like I felt like I like gave them reason for having believed in me, because
Yeah.
for a while there I was like, oh, well, kind of a disappointment so far. So it's been awesome
No.
to feel like, yeah, that like they have put me in great products, and they've supported me, and been just incredibly encouraging, and incredibly patient, and very much like, you do what's best for you, and we will you know be there supporting you the whole way. And yeah, so Sunday was just awesome to be able to celebrate with them. um, and it has felt like the right choice since day one, but very much so this past weekend. So
Yeah, I mean, any smart company has to know, like, when you're investing in a marathoner, like, this is the long game.
yeah.
Like, you have a fractured knee, maybe, but like, this is not about like this right now. This is like
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So I think
Yeah.
that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so my friend Mike, he said congratulations to you in the hotel lobby, and he was like,
Yeah.
she probably, do you know who I'm talking about? Mike
I
Coe.
think so.
And
Yeah.
he was like, she just probably thought I was like the weirdest guy, and now he's trying to interview you, I believe. But I know the question he wants to ask, and so in case you don't do that interview, I'm going to ask
Okay.
it for him. What shoes were you wearing on that course, and how did they feel?
I wore the HE4 PB,
Okay.
and so it's got the new foam, and they are super duper springy. I really like them. I had practiced in them for like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, and every time I got in them, I was like, "Oh, this is good." I really like these.
Fun.
So, yeah, they've got almost like a mesh kind of upper, like they're really really lightweight on top. It doesn't there's not like a whole lot of shoe over your foot, but they're really snug. And so I like that about them. Um, and yeah, they're great. So
Okay, I love that.
yeah.
Uh, okay, so we'll wrap up here in just a minute. The 2:21:56 puts you at the 10th all-time fastest marathon in American history for women. I mean, does the thought of a 2 with a 1 next sound good to you?
I don't know. I feel like the next stop will hopefully be 220. Um, we'll see. I mean, it's definitely. I'd be lying to say it isn't a goal now. It seems a lot more realistic than it did a week ago. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Yeah, I'm super excited about it because I do feel like there are a couple of things that like I could do better. I mean, sleep is a huge one. But um I missed the bottle. I either missed 30 or 35, but maybe both. But I know that there was one table in there where I don't even remember seeing the table. Like I feel like I got to like some non multiple of five and was like, like
Huh.
I guess we're past that table. So I feel like maybe that would have been helpful. I know that it was like just purely by the numbers, it was more of a humid day than is considered ideal. So I feel like there are things I could have definitely handled the pacing situation a little bit better. I was probably exposed for the windiest parts of the course.
Mm.
I feel like there's room for growth. And yeah, I'm super excited to get back at it, although my coach is cautioning me to chill out for a
You
little
gotta
bit.
chill. You gotta chill.
Yeah.
You gotta enjoy this like success.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we can't forget to do. We can't
Yeah.
forget to like how long does the celebration go on? But you're in Toronto right now with TCS.
I am, yeah.
Okay, tell everybody what you're doing.
So I'm here to support the Team CCS Teachers Program. They have 16 teachers here this weekend, and then in New York they'll have 54. New York is definitely the bigger of the the programs, but yeah, there are these 16 teachers that have trained and kind of shared their running marathoning journey with their class this past year, or the past, I guess, couple of months at the beginning of the school year. And a lot of them are really involved in their schools, like running clubs and things like that. So I'm here to support that program. This morning I judged a competition that, kids were sharing their different apps for promoting gender equality in sports, and promoting more, women's sports, and keeping women from leaving the sport in high school, which is definitely continues to be a trend. And so got to be part of that event this morning, and that was a lot of fun. It was like almost all sixth graders, so it was like right in my wheelhouse. And yeah, then I'll be out on the 5K course tomorrow, not running, just cheering.
Good for
I'll meet the
you.
teachers tomorrow, and then I'll be cheering on the teachers on Sunday for the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon.
I love that you do that. I mean, obviously it's like a perfect fit. Like why would how would you not be like an ambassador for this program with being a teacher and a professional marathoner? Um in your 6th grade though, is that cuz my oldest is in 6th grade now and he's in middle school. Is that middle school for you?
It's middle school at this new school that I'm at, and last year when I taught sixth grade, this is my third year teaching sixth. But at my last school, it was the oldest in elementary.
Okay. That's how it
Yeah.
was when I was in school and now our kids
Yeah.
go in 6th grade. What do I need to know about a 6th grader in math? I feel like I don't get a lot of intel with him being in middle school.
Yeah. fact fluency is important. I feel like every kid hates multiplication facts, but it's a year where it really matters.
Okay.
I think just generally, like sixth grade is a huge year for just kind of growing to be more independent, and to like to make sure that you know how to use a planner because like the workload's going to start to rack up. So that's I feel like that's the biggest thing I emphasize with the kids is like just taking accountability for your work, communicating, um, you know, figuring out the strategies that of time management and things like that, and navigating breaking apart long assignments into chunks, things like that. They're just tricky for sixth graders, and there's a lot of growth that happens in sixth grade. So
Yeah, his homeroom teacher is also his math teacher. So he
oh,
goes
nice.
math is like first for him.
That's awesome.
I'm trying to put myself in like us in your kids' shoes though. Like what do your students know like how big of a deal your marathoning is? And like do they realize who like what you're doing?
So, the kiddos, sorry, I don't know what happened there. The kiddos figured out that I have a Wikipedia page this past week, and that was a whole thing. So, um,
That's great.
they're kind of starting to be aware of it. I guess some of their parents had seen some of the media things when I came in. So we didn't have school on Monday. We had school on Tuesday, and when I came in on um on Tuesday, I didn't say anything. I really feel like I was just kind of in that point where like I'd kind of slept okay. Like I mean I was exhausted, but like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, that was so cool. So I just hadn't slept super well. And so when I got to school on Tuesday, I didn't mention it to anybody. Some of my colleagues, well, actually, almost all my colleagues knew, but the kids didn't for the most part. So I didn't say anything to my first period. And then in my second period class, there were two boys in particular who were often off task, who were like very, very attentive and ready to listen. And I was like, all right, something's up. And so then we took kind of a brain break in the middle of class and we shared kind of what we had done over the long weekend. And they immediately were like, okay, well now that we can like not talk about math, like we know because the social studies teacher that they had had before had told them and had shown them some of the the Runner's World article and stuff like that. And so they're like, did you know that you're America's fastest teacher? And it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is taking on a life of its own now. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like I mean, as a parent of a sixth grader, like it's cool this week. We'll see if it's cool next week, but I am hoping that it's bought me like just the slightest bit of street cred because some of the boys, like I think, like particularly the boys, were a little more attentive this week. The girls were great, but they would ask like more thoughtful questions, like when did you start running, or what's your favorite sport, or where do you run? But the guys just wanted to know like the stats and
for
all.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like,
Did you know you're on YouTube? Yes, I know I'm on YouTube. So
they want to know if they can beat you in the mile.
yeah. I've been challenged to a couple races, and I was like, I mean, no.
Do you really want to do this, kids?
Yeah.
You do not know what you're getting yourself into. Oh, that's so good. I love it. I know. Listen, if you take a teaching break for a couple years, it's always going to be there for you.
Yeah.
And, I don't think you can make a wrong decision there. I'm excited for whichever one you make, but I think it's so special it's got to be an inspiration for these kids to see a teacher pursuing a goal outside of her, other profession so wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, how should we wrap this up? Oh my gosh, it's over. What should we talk about? Let's see. Because I always wrap up with end of podcast questions, but I'm like, you don't have time to read books right now. Like, what am I talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I ripped through so many books this summer that I can't even I have a hard time.
Can you spit some of them out?
I mean, I'm on my phone, so I'd have to go over to Audible and like pull them up.
You do a lot of audiobooks, like on
yeah, I listen to Audible all the time in the pool. That was kind of like because I listen, like our public library has a partnership with I think Libby, and so I would just wait for books, and then when I got hurt, I was like, absolutely not. My like injury indulgence is I'm buying Audible and buying all the books because it's the only thing that's getting me through these hours and hours and hours in the pool. Because I would swim and pool run, but when I pool run during the pandemic, I figured out that I was that the time flew by much faster with a podcast or
What do
listening to
you
something.
like? What headphones do you use in the pool?
I use AirPods and I put my phone in my shoe at the edge of the pool. Um,
And you just hope
because
you
like
don't go under it all?
yeah, well, yeah, no, I don't put my head under. Well, I mean, when I swim, I do, but like when I pool run, I don't. But what I figured out is that like at the pools that I go to, people like they won't kick your shoe into the water, but they're like I watch them kick other people. Like the lifeguards might not be paying attention, or kids will be running by, and they'll kick people's keys into the pool and stuff like that. But they won't kick your shoes into the pool.
Your
So my
shoe's
phone,
safe.
my phone goes in my shoe, and I wear AirPods. And yeah, it's good. But yeah, I listen to a lot of books, and a lot of podcasts. So, yeah.
Well, I guess we can end with this question then. What would be your message to someone who is like really feeling the itch to go all in on a goal, but there's a fear, right, of going all in on something. There's the fear of failure, like what if it doesn't work out? And also just like the fear of commitment, like do I really want to do that? What is your message to that person?
I mean, I feel like you'll always wonder what if you don't try. And I feel like that's been something that like has kind of guided me in this journey. Is that like, you know, you kind of figure out what, if it's worth it to you, and then, and just give it a try. Maybe give yourself a timeline for like, if I haven't reached my goal by X time, like maybe I look for more balance, but um, I don't think you'd regret it. So I would say just go for it.
Susanna Sullivan, our fastest teacher in America.
Yeah.
And 10th fastest American woman ever in the marathon. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll see if we actually were live or not. I don't know.
Okay.
Emma's gonna get this turned around today